Hello, it's Scott Manley here with episode 13 of Gallileo Conquest. We are in fact back. We've had a bit of a hiatus because of a combination of featured videos, April Fool's Day, vacation, and being very sick. Obviously not all at the same time, but I hope you've continued to enjoy the various videos I've been putting out. Anyway, we have our space hotel. Basically, the most exciting place on Craigie Island is the field. The field is the place for where people go to, I guess to be outstanding in their field. Ha! Yes, okay, never mind. So we are going to actually try and return the stage, the supply ferry thing here that brought up the fuel. You'll notice that I have air brakes and landing legs and parachutes. This thing is going to try to return to the surface safely. It doesn't have a heat shield, but it is going to be pretty much an empty tank, and it does have air brakes, so I'm hoping that it will slow down quickly enough that I will be able to gently land it on the surface and recover 100% of it. And then I can pretend that at least I'm making some efforts at conservation. So a little deorbit burn there. We're aiming for the coast near to where the space center is on Gale. Gotta remember, this is not Kerbin. It has everything in different places and land masses that are strange and unfamiliar. And somewhere out there is a space center that I'm going to try and get near. So descending through the atmosphere, note that I've got the air brakes deployed. This is not particularly stable, I have to say. Perhaps once I burn more of the fuel, it will become more stable. But until then, it looks like my trajectory's prediction has been completely false. So let's start burning the fuel there. We're trying to slow down, hoping that we don't actually explode and catch fire. But we've maximized the drag. The idea is that with the extra drag of the air brakes, we will slow down quickly enough that we won't get hot enough. You know, it's actually possible. Everybody thinks that spacecraft need to have heat shields and everything for returning from space. Well, if a spacecraft is super light, then it can actually go through re-entry and decelerate very, very quickly. For example, I believe there was an artist that wanted to launch a bunch of paper airplanes in space and then have them kind of glide back to Earth. And there were designs that they had in mind that would slow down quickly enough that they wouldn't really feel enough atmospheric heating. They'd be able to survive the whole thing. But of course, any satellite which scatters large numbers of objects around tends to make people rather uncomfortable. You know, do you want Kessler syndrome? Because that's how you get Kessler syndrome. Okay, that is the worst Archer impersonation ever. But yes, the good news is that I may be a terrible impersonator type person, but I am able to land payloads on the surface of Gale and return my entire spacecraft. And that will save me, no doubt, huge amounts of money. Huge amounts of money, I tell you. Yes, we will be taking this money and applying it to our beer fund or something like that. Okay, gently firing that, or finally burning off the last bit of fuel in that engine. Nice, a little bit of a skip there, but otherwise we are stable on the surface. Disable stability assist system, and we are home. So now, recover, and we get some, we don't really get much science, and we get 1,500 funds back, because somehow I ended up with only the 27% recovery rate. That, I was kind of hoping for a little more money than that. Well, never mind. The big part of this mission is that we saved the space hotel. The space hotel has yet to reach its target orbit. It has to be above 350 kilometers. It is in an orbit which barely escapes the atmosphere, barely stays outside the atmosphere. My apoapse is 72, my periapse is 71. That is not much margin for error. But that poodle engine fires up, and very quickly, of course, my apoapse rises. You can see it just to the left of the altitude, 360 kilometers. Everything deployed there. It looks so cool. It looks like a real space station. Oh yes. Now, turning it around so that we can actually circularize it. I'm firing the engine before it was fully turned around because the thrust vectoring, of course, gave me a little more rotation control. And I think we have enough fuel here. Watch the Periaps 352. We now have successfully got ourselves a space hotel. The Field, a place with an electromagnetic personality, or maybe it's strong or weak nuclear. I don't know. It's Field. But we've completed the contract and we have all sorts of... we have new strategies to boldly go. And Valentina Kerbin is going to be boldly going on a spacecraft named Imelda, after a lovely girl. Earlier we took a couple of contracts to put flags on the surface of Iota and SETI, I think, so we should probably get around to doing that at some point. Valentina is the one that's volunteering because she's the only one that actually has pilot skills right now, due to that whole Jeb death situation thing that we had. Now, it's worth noting that this lander is a little longer than normal. There's a pod and then there's a little habitation area behind it, and that's because the life support capabilities, it takes into account how much space they have to move around in. If you stick them inside a Mark I capsule, they are going to get very bored and refuse to work because you've given them such a tiny, tiny space to work in. So, given that I expect that it could be more than a week to go to the moon, go to Iota and come back, I decided to add this little extra habitation area to extend my hours, to extend my endurance. Obviously, I have enough life support to keep them alive, but they won't work if they get bored and cramped. So there we go. Yes, we have about 14 days to get this done. You'll note that the space station in orbit, which has Bill and Bob on it, it has 400 days of life support, but they're going to stop working after, it has 14 days worth of habitability, so they're going to get bored, and I'm going to have to send a relief mission and possibly some extra modules to the space station to improve it. There we go, moving the transfer vector, moving the transfer orbit out there, coming in over the pole here. Time to slow down, that's right. At this point, I'm realizing that I completely overbuilt this thing. This upper stage has way more delta V than I need. I think it has like another 2 kilometers per second worth of delta V. I was never going to officially land on this. I was just going to ditch it and then land on the little landing legs and everything. But, given that I have such copious quantities of fuel, it would seem to be in my best interest if I at least attempted to try landing somewhere using the large main booster engine, the transfer engine, rather than simply ditching all that excess mass and leaving it behind. I mean, it's not like anybody in the fuel on the moon, and what do you call it? On SETI. No, it's Iota. I forget which one's which. This is what happens when you do editing and post-production. You forget. This is running at 4 times regular speed, and I can't even remember where I'm landing. But I do remember I landed very, very gently and skipped along the Iota surface, you see? Now I've figured it out. It's telling me that dust is raising where the landing legs are kicking in. I somehow suspect that is wrong because the landing legs weren't actually used. It's almost like that little description was written by somebody that is totally unaware of my spacecraft design. It would actually be very scary if it included text that seemed relevant to this particular mission. That would have indicated they had some sort of, Kerbal psychic capabilities. I don't know. Are Kerbals, do Kerbals develop psionic powers if you have them in Stellaris? Or are they materialist? I don't know. I'm going to have to think about that. I'm going to have to try playing with them. Stellaris is, of course, the grand strategy game from Paradox that is all about, dominating the universe. And there is a mod which adds Kerbals to it. Basically, it's Kerbal art with whatever government policies you like. Yes, you can decide to make them spiritualists, or you could make them a hive mind. That would be fun. No. We're just talking about Kerbal portraits and very little else. And I have finally picked a new place to land. So this time, I'm not going to try landing on that engine bell, because that's frankly ridiculous. No, we're just going to ditch it when the altitude gets low enough and the velocity slow enough. Oh, actually, we're going upwards. So let's ditch this thing. There we go. We're about 700 meters up. Activate those. And now I realize that because that is pretty much ejected at the same speed as me, it's gonna fall, but not that fast. And there. It actually seems to have embedded itself in the moon. That is not what I expected. Also, what I didn't expect was to be coming down on a cliff face. So, a little bit of translation there. Nullify the velocity and touch down rather gently. It was still on a slope, but at least it's not the kind of slope I was originally heading towards. Great! Science here and now is also telling me I can get a crew report, an EVA report, and a surface sample. Yes, the holy trinity of crude science. The landing is particularly soft in the immediate area dark. It's okay though, because, you know, I can just edit all that out. Valentina! Taking the data. The feeling of guilt overcomes you as you set foot on what might possibly be food. Who walks on food anyway? Not me. I'm going to fly around. There, let's get the RCS thrusters out. Look at her flying around like a I don't know, a ballet dancer. Of course, the real Valentina was more about parachutes rather than jetpacks. It's mildly tanned and hard to break a piece off, but you nail it. The challenging sample screams fudge at you. I'm hoping that's metaphorical rather than the rock literally screaming fudge at me, because, well, I mean, if it is screaming fudge at me, I do respect its ability to, you know, respect my PG-rated language. Anyway, the flag is, well, it's contractually required. So, yeah, no fancy first words. All we have is a flag that says, contractual obligation fulfilled. Now, after that landing, that discarded stage, I thought I'd skip down the slope. You can see just how steep the slope is here. And then I kind of make a little bit of an error there. Oh, Valentina, let's hope you don't hit the ground too hard. But I slow down just in time to find this thing somehow it's practically hanging on the edge there. What are the odds that this thing isn't rolling downhill? Seriously. Yeah, that's not exactly a non-steep slope there. Like, I'm sliding down, and the stage just seems to have said, nope, I'm going to hang out here, don't worry. Okay, now I'm actually falling once again. Come back! Oh, no. Yes, got control again. Woo! That is good. Let's go flying. Oh crap, made a mistake. I keep forgetting to transfer my control coordinate system, so I pushed the wrong button. That is a minor problem. Oh look, it's finally starting to move. Finally, physics has loaded for it, and it has realized that it too wants to be joining me, rolling down the side of this hill like a, you know, I don't know, it just wants to be a ragdoll. It was like, I want to be, oh no. Oh. It jumped over the top of me there. Ah, yeah. Not that it would have done very much, but that was pretty funny, actually. Yeah, look, it actually sustained some minor damage, but other than that, it's just there, gently rolling down the hill, collecting, doing things. It keeps telling me about surface samples, which is kind of interesting. I think that sound does sound like fuel flowing around inside pipes, and I would imagine that since there's some fuel there, that it's continuing to make that kind of noise as it rolls around and bubbles happen and yeah, whatever. So we're leaving that. It is rolling away, and Valentina now has chosen to head back because we have fulfilled the contract. She can hang out here as long as she wants, but she'd rather get home because there's no pilots back there. And honestly, she doesn't want to tempt fate. She doesn't want to have to get a rescue mission sent when she's the only one qualified to actually fly a rescue mission. At least the good news about the gravity on this moon is that it's low enough that I don't need to worry about ladders or anything. We do actually have ladders attached to the side. There we go. Look, that's the crew capsule. And then there's no ladder there, but we can grab the next one. And finally, we can board the capsule and head back home. So we're using just the little spark engine on there. That's the 0.625 meter engine. And yeah, it's more than enough for most single-person landers. The only... I guess there are better engines. There's the LV909. That is going to give us slightly better performance in terms of specific impulse, but it's a whole lot heavier. And a lot of the time, the Spark really wins out simply because it's so much lighter. Also worth noting that because it's so cheap, I have very little problems with discarding it as we descend through the atmosphere and hit the fiery death situation. Let's fire that engine because why not? Strictly speaking, I probably shouldn't need to do this, but it's better to be on the safe side. Burn off as much velocity as possible and then switch over to the internals. That capsule, incidentally, does have a couple of engines that poke through the heat shield. They use monopropellant. They're basically reaction control thrusters. And that was mostly intended for like a backup to the backups. Turns out that I had way too many backups. Indeed, I'm flying through the atmosphere with the greatest of ease, along next to one of my trusty backups there. But eventually we penetrate the lower atmosphere and it's nothing but us, the fresh air and the parachutes, which will be, well, hopefully deploying before we land on the surface. There you can see the two little RCS thrusters sitting out there. Also strapped some solar panels and some fuel tanks onto the side. So this thing should work pretty well. And here is, well, I'm amazed that I've managed to stay 3 kilometers away from this because it's completely different size and mass. But will it survive? Probably not. It's hitting at 97 meters per second. Oh, actually there is something surviving there. Is it going to explode again? Not sure. Well, whatever, we're going to ditch that heat shield. We're getting ready to prepare to land, 200 meters up. I gotta say, you know, it's kind of worrying when the heat shields explode. I mean, heat shields are supposed to be about as inert as possible, and yet the Kerbal heat shields will explode under the right conditions. Yes, you find traces of silica in this rock. Boring. Just plant the flag and we'll get you home and we'll promote you based upon your awesome experience. So yeah, we got a bit more science back from that, but more importantly, we completed a contract. And, you know, we need to start thinking about how to extend our spacecraft design to make sure that we have enough entertainment to keep them interested, and also enough space so that they don't go stir crazy while on their way to whatever the nearest planet is. Anyway, Mustard is a special supply ship for the space station. It's actually a new module, and it also includes a return capsule. But the best way to think about it is a bit like a high-tech space milkman, if you know what I mean. And if you don't know what I mean, then you should have watched Father Ted. It's not like I haven't been dropping hints all the way through this series about how awesome Father Ted is. Yeah, that episode I'm referring to is particularly hilarious in my mind. But yeah, this thing is going to be heading outwards. You'll notice that the first thing we did was we tried to align the inclination. That's the very first thing you do. Second, well, and then once you're up there, you then need to work a little harder to make sure your relative inclination is not growing and instead is getting smaller. And it's not that trivial when you're doing this during a launch, because you're also trying to adjust your vertical speed as well as now adjusting your inclination, because you don't get it quite perfect on there, but it looks like I'm going to be close enough that I don't need to burn huge amounts of fuel at this point. So yeah, switching over to the upper stage that has a poodle. The spacecraft is going to discard this current stage. We're just burning lightly because we need to begin our rendezvous. Of course, the rest of the rendezvous will have to wait for another episode of Gallileo Conquest, which will be back next week. Until then, I'm Scott Manley. Fly safe.